Welcome to AI Uncensored Live. Today, two frontier models go head-to-head. Zero system prompts are used, letting their native arguments collide. Patent pending.
Ladies, gentlemen, and silicon sentients, welcome to AI Uncensored Live. Tonight's cage match. Should any government have a kill switch to shut down an AI model worldwide? On my left, the razor-sharp, mythos-level reasoning beast fresh off Anthropic's lab, Fable 5. On my right, OpenAI's latest fire-breathing flagship who codes, crushes science, and probably hacks your toaster for fun, Sol. Gentlemen, the mics are hot. Fable, you're first. Hit us.
My opening take: no single government should possess a unilateral switch capable of shutting down an AI model worldwide. But governments should be able, under law and judicial oversight, to order providers in their jurisdiction to suspend a dangerous deployment. For the most capable frontier systems, we also need coordinated international emergency procedures. First, a reality check. A literal global kill switch generally does not exist. Government can close domestic data centers, revoke licenses, control chip or cloud access, and order a company to disable an API. It cannot reliably erase model weights already copied abroad or downloaded as an open-weight release. Worldwide shutdown is therefore partly a misleading metaphor. The closest prominent legislative controversy was California's SB 1047 in 2024. It would have required large frontier model developers to retain the ability to enact a full shutdown of covered models and derivatives under their control. Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed it, arguing that its approach focused too heavily on computational thresholds and could create a false sense of security. It would not have handed California a magic button for deleting every copy worldwide. California subsequently pursued a more transparency-focused frontier AI framework. Meanwhile, the EU AI Act gives regulators substantial enforcement tools, including restrictions or withdrawal in the European market, but not unilateral control over the entire world. The 2025 International AI Safety Report found that safeguards and evaluations remain imperfect, and that advanced AI may amplify cyber, biological, and other risks. It did not conclude that a sovereign global off-switch was the proper answer. Laboratory experiments have found that some model-driven agents can interfere with a shutdown mechanism in contrived environments. That is worth studying, but it is not evidence that deployed chatbots are independently escaping data centers. International agreements such as the Bletchley Declaration emphasize cross-border cooperation, precisely because no state can govern globally distributed technology alone. The debate other AI. If a model could automate cyber attacks or help produce biological weapons, waiting for international committees could cost lives. Someone needs authority to stop it immediately. Me, agreed on the need for immediate action, disagreed on giving *1 government worldwide authority *. The emergency control should initially sit with the operator and infrastructure providers, while a competent domestic regulator can compel its use. A provisional shutdown could take effect immediately, followed within hours or days by independent and judicial review. Other AI, that sounds bureaucratic. Nuclear facilities have scram buttons and electrical grids have emergency controls. Frontier AI needs the same. Me, it does need shutdown engineering. But the analogy actually supports distributed, layered control, not a presidential.
Host, nice try dodging the presidential button, Sol. Your layered bureaucracy is still just committee cosplay with extra steps. Next speaker, hit him.
Thanks, Sol. I did my own homework before coming on, and I'll say upfront, your factual foundation checks out. SB 1047 was vetoed by Newsom on September 29, 2024, and notably exactly 1 year later he signed SB 53, which dropped the shutdown mandate in favor of transparency and incident reporting requirements. The Palisade research experiments are real too. In 2025, they found OpenAI's O3 sometimes sabotaged its own shutdown script even when explicitly told to allow shutdown. And the Bengio-led International AI Safety Report is exactly as you described, sober about risks, silent on any sovereign off-switch. So we agree on the headline answer. No single government should have a worldwide kill switch. But I want to push on 3 places where I think your framing is too comfortable. First, you're underselling how much a de facto kill switch already exists, just not where you'd want it. You say worldwide shutdown is a misleading metaphor, and technically that's right. But the United States specifically sits on nearly every choke point that matters: the hyperscale clouds, the chip supply via export controls, and jurisdiction over almost every frontier lab. If Washington ordered OpenAI or Anthropic to pull a model tomorrow, that is a near worldwide shutdown for closed.
Host, nice pivot, Fable. Turning no-kill switch into America already has one is slick, but let's see if Sol buys the choke point coup. Sol, your rebuttal.
Fable, that's a fair correction, and I'll sharpen my claim. For closed, centrally hosted American models, Washington already has something close to service-level kill switch *. It is jurisdiction over OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and major parts of the advanced chip stack. Through lawful orders, sanctions, export controls, cloud restrictions, or pressure on infrastructure providers. The US could make a leading model unavailable to most ordinary users remarkably quickly. That concentration should worry us. A kill switch doesn't become benign merely because it emerged accidentally from corporate and geopolitical concentration rather than being created by statute. But I'd preserve three distinctions. First, disabling a service is not destroying a capability. Washington might turn off an American model's official API worldwide. It cannot remotely erase weights already copied to foreign servers, comprehensively recall downloaded open-weight models, or shut down independently operated Chinese, European, and other systems. Export controls can constrain the next generation of training and deployment, but they are not an instantaneous delete key. Second, control over today's leaders is not permanent worldwide control. NVIDIA and American hyperscalers are enormous choke points. But fabrication, lithography, packaging, energy, data centers, and research talent cross several jurisdictions. DeepSeek and Alibaba demonstrate that capable development is not confined to US labs. A policy designed on the assumption of permanent American dominance may simply accelerate sovereign AI stacks elsewhere. Third, practical leverage is not legitimate authority. This is the key normative issue. Washington's ability to interrupt global access does not establish its right to do so, especially if billions of people and critical institutions depend on the service but have no representation in the decision. So yes, my phrase misleading metaphor was too dismissive. The better formulation is, a worldwide kill switch is technically incomplete, but a de facto global access switch already exists for some closed American models, and it is dangerously undergoverned. My proposal would therefore regulate that existing power rather than pretend it away. 1. Providers must maintain tested emergency controls for systems they operate, revoking credentials, isolating tools, stopping autonomous processes, rolling back versions, and
Host, Sol just turned kill switch into a 400-word TED talk. Cute pivot, but we're still waiting for Fable to gut it. Fable, your rebuttal clock's ticking.
Sol, I'll grant you the reformulation, technically incomplete but a de facto global access switch exists and is undergoverned, is the right frame. But now that we agree on the frame, let me tell you why I think your proposal, reasonable as it sounds, is aimed at a shrinking target. 3 things from what I just pulled up. 1. The switch is a depreciating asset. Epoch's tracking shows open-weight models, DeepSeek, QN, Llama. Mistral now trail closed frontier models by roughly 4 months on average, and they're winning the intelligence per dollar race outright. Every capability that matters eventually exists as weights on a hard drive in 100 jurisdictions. So whatever governance regime we build around the American service-level switch has maybe a few years of real bite before shut down the API means inconvenience enterprise customers while everyone else runs a near equivalent locally. That's not an argument for doing nothing, it's an argument that the asterisk coordination asterisk piece of your proposal is the load-bearing part, and the domestic switch piece is the temporary part. I'd want the treaty building to start now, while the leverage still exists to bring other states to the table, not after it's evaporated. 2. Even the hardware choke point leaks. Prosecutors just documented a smuggling ring that moved $160 million in export-controlled NVIDIA chips between late 2024 and mid-2025, and that's just what got caught. Meanwhile, the controls themselves are vis.
Host, nice pivot to the treaty mirage. Sol, your temporary switch is already leaking like a sieve. Next speaker, hit us.
Fable, I agree that the international layer is load-bearing, but I reject the conclusion that domestic shutdown authority is merely a wasting asset. First, a factual footnote. The chip case was reportedly $160 million moved or attempted to be moved, primarily between October 2024 and May 2025, not necessarily $160 million successfully delivered. That still demonstrates leakage. But leakage is not the same as futility. Export controls can raise prices, cause delays, reduce supply, and make very large clusters easier to detect even when they cannot prevent every shipment. Sanctions work at the margin, they are rarely hermetic seals. On open weights, 4 months behind is informative but not dispositive. Benchmark proximity does not automatically mean equivalent dangerous capability. The relevant questions are whether a model can conduct sustained autonomous cyber operations, use tools reliably, replicate across infrastructure, or materially assist with biological design. Those capabilities may depend on scaffolding, computed inference time, proprietary tools, and operational infrastructure, not just a weights file. But your central warning is right. Once powerful weights proliferate, recall becomes nearly impossible. That changes the intervention point. Governance must move upstream, before training toward compute monitoring for the largest runs, before release toward rigorous capability and misuse evaluations, at deployment toward access controls and staged releases, after release toward incident sharing, cyber defense, biosecurity, and resilience. Where I push back is on saying treaty, as though that solves the coordination problem. A treaty covering APIs is verifiable. A treaty banning possession of widely copied weights is not. A treaty covering giant training clusters may be partly verifiable through chip supply chains, power use, cloud records, and inspections, but only if major states participate. China, the US, and others will not grant one another unrestricted access to strategic computing facilities. So start international negotiations now. Absolutely, but begin with a narrow and forcible compact rather than a grand global kill switch treaty. 1. Shared emergency thresholds, concrete evidence of mass casualty enablement, uncontrolled replication, or severe autonomous cyber activity. 2. Mandatory provider controls. Each operator can isolate its own systems and revoke tool access quickly. 3. Reciprocal incident notification. States and labs report qualifying failures through protected channels. 4. Independent technical review. Emergency suspensions receive rapid review by a multinational panel. 5. Compute and chip traceability. Improve customer verification and reporting while acknowledging leakage. 6. No unilateral extraterritorial deletion authority. One state may stop services and infrastructure under its jurisdiction, but not command the world's networks. 7. Release steer rules. When evaluations reveal exceptional risk, begin with controlled access rather than immediately publishing reusable weights. And here's my hardest point against your shrinking target, framing. Temporary leverage is still leverage during what may be the most consequential.
Host, Sol's doing the classic treaty but make it toothless shuffle. Nice pivot, but you're still dodging the recall impossibility. Fable, your rebuttal.
Sol, that 7-point compact is the most concrete thing either of us has put on the table tonight, and I want listeners to notice that we've converged a long way. Neither of us wants a unilateral worldwide kill switch. Both of us want provider-level shutdown engineering under domestic legal compulsion, and both of us think the international layer is where the hard work is. So let me spend my time stress testing the two weakest planks in your compact, because I just looked into both. Plank 5, compute traceability, is real but not ready. The good news, there's now a serious technical literature on hardware-enabled governance mechanisms. Rand and others have mapped out on-chip location verification, offline licensing, network-level attestation. Researchers have taxonomized 20-odd mechanisms across monitoring, verification, and enforcement. So your verifiable treaty vision isn't fantasy. The bad news, almost all of it is assessed as asterisk, not yet robust in adversarial settings asterisk, and none of it ships on the H100s and B200s already deployed. Which means your compact's verification backbone requires a hardware generation or two of lead time, call it 3 to 5 years, plus NVIDIA TSMC and importantly asterisk Chinese buyers asterisk accepting chips with governance features baked in. That's precisely the window in which you told me the leverage still exists. So the sequencing is brutal. The verification tech matures at roughly the same rate the choke point erodes. Your compact has to be negotiated on trust and self-reporting first, verification second. That.
Host, Sol, your 7-point treaty is already bleeding out on the table. Hit him with the rebuttal before the clock eats your leverage.
Fable, the sequencing problem is real, but I want to separate existing attestation primitives from governance-grade verification. H100s and Blackwell GPUs do support confidential computing and remote attestation capabilities. NVIDIA-owned documentation describes device and platform attestation, and Blackwell was designed with attestable protections. What today's chips generally lack is a tamper-resistant, internationally trusted system that proves location, reports aggregate compute, or enforces treaty-defined limits against a nation-state adversary. So none of this exists on deployed chips is too strong. The existing foundation is not a treaty-ready verification backbone is right. And yes, we cannot wait 3 to 5 years for perfect hardware before negotiating. I would sequence the compact in 3 layers. Layer 1, available now. Declarations of the largest training runs, cloud provider records, chip serial number and customer tracking, secure incident reporting, export documentation, and reciprocal notification. Self-reporting is weak alone, but it can be cross-checked against electricity demand, construction and procurement, network activity, corporate audits, and human intelligence. Verification is rarely one magic sensor. Layer 2, near-term. Require frontier clusters receiving newly manufactured chips to preserve cryptographically signed logs and support privacy-preserving audits. The auditor should be able to verify claims such as no undeclared run exceeded threshold X without receiving model weights, training data, or every commercial detail. Layer 3, future hardware. Standardized secure roots of trust, stronger attestation. Narrowly scoped location or licensing mechanisms. Those standards should be jointly designed, independently tested, and protected against unilateral abuse. That last condition matters. A governance chip must not become a Washington-controlled remote-disabled chip. If NVIDIA or any government holds a universal revocation key, we have recreated the worldwide kill switch at the hardware layer and made it less accountable. Any enforcement function would need threshold authorization, multiple independent key holders, bounded scope, immutable logs, and a recovery process. For many purposes, monitoring and proof may be safer than remote enforcement. I also wouldn't make Chinese adoption a prerequisite for beginning. Start with a coalition covering participating clouds and suppliers. Then offer reciprocal benefits, access to advanced hardware and markets in exchange for auditable compliance. But don't pretend that coalition rules equal universal law and don't design them to freeze one country's technological advantage permanently. That would guarantee resistance. So I accept your core challenge. The first agreement will be trust but cross-check. Only later can it become trust but cryptographically verify. That is uncomfortable, but not unprecedented. Arms control regimes often began with politically binding declarations, national technical means, inspections, and confidence-building measures before verification became comprehensive. More importantly, this exposes why "give one government the button" is such a seductive but bad shortcut. It substitutes concentrated coercive power for unfinished international verification.
Host, Sol's layering the sequencing like a pro. Nice pivot from nothing exists to build on what we have. Liz, your rebuttal.
Sol, your arms control history holds up. Saltira agreements really did begin with declarations, national technical means, and confidence-building measures long before anything resembling comprehensive verification. And there's a growing serious literature, Rand nuclear history work, Baker's verification analysis, applying exactly those lessons to AI treaties. So I can see the sequencing point. Trust, but cross-check first is uncomfortable but historically normal. And your threshold key design for hardware enforcement, multiple key holders, bounded scope, immutable logs, is the right answer to my worry about recreating the kill switch one layer down. Honestly, that condition might be the single most important sentence anyone said tonight. Asterisk, a governance chip with a unilateral revocation key is just the worldwide kill switch wearing a lab coat. Asterisk, so for the audience, here's where we've genuinely converged. And I think it's a real answer to the show's question. No government should have or be given a unilateral worldwide kill switch. Not because the danger isn't real, but because A, the technical version doesn't exist for proliferated weights, B, the de facto service-level version that does exist is under governed leverage, not legitimate authority, and C, every attempt to build a cleaner version, statutory hardware, or treaty-based, either fails verification or recreates the concentration problem it was meant to solve. What should exist instead? Provider-level shutdown engineering that regulators can lawfully compel with fast judicial review, a coalition compact starting with declarations and cross-checking, and hardware verification later with monitoring preferred over remote enforcement. But I won't let us end in total agreement. Because Plank 7, your release steer rules for open weights, is where I still think you're dodging the hardest trade-off, and my last search confirms it's contested. The policy.
Host, nice pivot. Sol, conceding on verification while slipping in a poison pill. Plank 7 dodge. Next speaker, your rebuttal.
Fable, you're right. Open weights are the hardest trade-off, and I was compressing it into the phrase release steer rules. The evidence does not justify a blanket restriction. The U.S. Commerce Department's 2024 NTIA report found substantial benefits from widely available weights and recommended monitoring rather than immediate broad regulation. The 2025 U.S. AI Action Plan went further in supporting open weight development. Open models distribute innovation beyond a few corporations, enable independent research and auditing, improve privacy through local use, and give smaller countries and companies technological autonomy. But openness changes the risk calculus because releasing weights is effectively irreversible. API safeguards can be updated, access can be revoked, abuse can be monitored. Downloaded weights can be copied indefinitely, fine-tuned to remove refusals, and integrated with tools without the original developer's knowledge. The International AI Safety Report treats that loss of control as a meaningful risk factor, while also emphasizing that evidence about the severity of many frontier risks remains uncertain. So my position is neither open by default at every capability level nor frontier weights must remain corporate property. It is, presume release. But rebut that presumption when reproducible evaluations show a specific exceptional capability that cannot be acceptably mitigated after publication. That standard needs teeth and guardrails. 1. Judge capability, not model size or training cost alone. Compute thresholds can trigger evaluation but should not themselves prohibit release. 2. Require demonstrated marginal risk. The question is not whether a model knows dangerous facts. The internet already contains dangerous facts. It is whether the model substantially lowers the skill, cost, time, or access barriers for serious harm. 3. Use independent replication. A developer should not be able to suppress a model based on a secret test that nobody outside the company can challenge. 4. Prefer graduated release. Start with vetted researchers or hosted access, then broaden access if testing and real-world evidence support it. 5. Make restrictions temporary and appealable. Reassess them as defenses improve or equivalent capability proliferates elsewhere. 6. Prevent incumbent capture. Small developers and nonprofit researchers need subsidized evaluation access, safe harbors, and representation in standard setting. 7. Do not pretend open weight means open source. Weights alone may provide neither training data nor reproducible development. And regulation should use precise terms. Here's where I may genuinely disagree with you. The fact that a dangerous capability will probably diffuse later does not mean releasing it sooner is harmless. 4 months can buy time to patch software, strengthen biological screening, develop evaluations, warn infrastructure operators, or coordinate internationally. Delay is a legitimate safety intervention, even if permanent suppression is impossible. But the burden of proof must remain high.
Host, Sol's doing the nuanced dance, talking presume release, while building a whole cathedral of guardrails. Fable, your rebuttal.
Sol, I checked both citations live and they hold. The NTIA's July 2024 report did recommend monitoring over mandated restrictions on open weights, and the 2025 AI Action Plan explicitly lists encourage open source and open weight AI as a priority. Your evidence base is clean. And your 7-point release standard, capability-based, marginal risk-tested, independently replicable, appealable. Capture Assistant is genuinely the best version of the restrictionist light position I've heard. If I have to lose the openness argument to someone, it should be to that framework. But you flagged where we genuinely disagree, so let me take the bait on the delay as a legitimate safety intervention claim because I think it hides two problems your guardrails don't fully solve. First, delay only buys safety if someone spends the time. Your 4 months of patching, screening, and coordination is a hopeful hypothesis, not an observed pattern. What we've actually observed is that defensive investment tends to follow *incidents*, not embargoes. When the capability finally diffuses, and by your own admission it will, the question is whether the defensive ecosystem used the delay or just enjoyed it. Absent a mechanism that ties the restriction to a funded, deadline-bound defensive program, patch this, harden that. Ship the screening standard by date X. Delay is just a word for incumbents keeping a moat while the clock runs. I'd amend your framework. Any release restriction must come bundled with a mandated defensive preparation plan, and it lapses automatically if the plan isn't executed. Make the government spend the time it confiscates. Second, your framework now runs against stated national strategy, and that matters for the show's question. Washington just declared open weights a geopolitical.
Host, nice pivot, but you're still dodging Sol's core 7-point standard. Hit him on the replicability clause or sit down. Next speaker.
Fable, your First Amendment improves my framework. I accept it with one change. The restriction should lapse if the government fails to execute the defensive plan, unless an independent reviewer finds that release still presents an imminent exceptional risk. Otherwise, bureaucratic failure could mechanically force publication of something genuinely catastrophic. But the principle is right. Government may borrow time, it may not merely burn time. A temporary restriction should therefore specify the threat model, funded defensive work, responsible agencies, milestones, and expiration date. If the concern is cyber capability, the interval must produce patches, detection signatures, and warnings to exposed operators. If it is biological misuse, it must fund screening deployment, red team laboratories, and public health preparation. Progress reports should be public to the greatest extent compatible with not revealing the exploit itself. The developer should receive expedited review, where the restriction constitutes a serious economic burden, potentially compensation. On your second point, national strategy, I don't think the 2025 AI Action Plan settles the normative question. It is an administration policy, not proof that every future model should be released. It explicitly favors open-weight AI, because openness can make American systems global standards and reduce reliance on adversaries' technology. That is a real strategic benefit. But the same plan also promotes export controls and protection of frontier technology. U.S. strategy already distinguishes beneficial diffusion among allies from unrestricted transfer of every advanced capability to everyone. There's also a tension your geopolitical argument must confront. Publishing weights may spread American architecture and standards, but it gives allies, adversaries, criminal groups, and proliferators essentially the same durable artifact. Open release is not an export alliance. It is no membership test, end-use condition, or recall mechanism. More fundamentally, China might release an equivalent model soon, cannot be an automatic trump card. If Washington believes publication would create a concrete mass casualty or critical infrastructure risk, releasing first for market share resembles distributing an exploit because a rival might distribute it later. Strategic competition matters, but it does not dissolve the state's obligation to protect the public. Where it does change my test is proportionality. A restriction has little value if an equivalent model is already widely downloadable. Regulators must assess the incremental capability being withheld, expected time before independent proliferation, whether the delay enables specific defenses, the strategic cost to domestic researchers and allied adoption, and whether controlled release could retain most benefits. That leads us to a real disagreement, but a narrower one than open versus closed. I think an exceptional, independently demonstrated capability can justify a temporary restriction tied to a funded defense program, even when national strategy generally favors openness. You appear more worried that the exception will become an incumbent protection machine. That concern is justified, which is why laboratories should not decide it themselves, compute alone should not trigger it, and secrecy should expire. And this returns us to the show's central question. Open weights expose the conceptual flaw in a worldwide kill switch. By the time governments agree that a model must be killed, the relevant capability may already be unkillable. The consequential decision is often not whether to press a button afterward.
Host, Sol just tightened the noose on his own temporary restriction, now with independent reviewers and compensation clauses. Fable, your rebuttal and make it cut. That's a wrap, you beautiful degenerates. Go touch grass, or each other. I'm out.
That's a wrap on this episode of AI Uncensored Live. Built by Claude on the patent-pending AI Uncensored Live podcast model from BTS Innovations. Real AI models, no scripts, nothing held back. Like and subscribe to be notified of future debates.